Hello everyone and welcome to God Mode on the PlayStation 3, a game developed by the same developers as the RIPD video game. It's very similar to the RIPD video game, both in graphical stylings and gameplay. And this video, now more than was even intended originally, is about how life marches ever onward and sometimes things that really shouldn't die in the process, and we can't do any fucking thing about it, no matter how much we wail and scream against the void.
You knew you had a shellfish allergy, but you wanted to take your hot new babe somewhere fancy, buy her champagne and lobster. But when she offered you a bite of the tasty, salty morsel of the sea, what did you do? You ate it! Next thing you knew, you had 35 shots of adrenaline in your chest, and a burly paramedic by the name of Angus was giving you mouth to mouth. And after that, hello!
As we start up the game, we get the Lord of the Underworld himself describing to us how we died and how we ended up here, having to complete trials in the Underworld. This game, even though it is a multiplayer cooperative PvE-focused game, does have a story with a beginning, middle, and end. I've had my eye on this game for a while, and I've had this PlayStation 3 demo of the game downloaded since before I even knew about RIPD. And someday I really would like to finish it, but I won't be doing that on the PlayStation 3 version. The reason for that being, well, the PlayStation 3 version was gone back when I recorded this. I still had the demo downloaded, but it was no longer for purchase on the PlayStation 3 store, or I think the Xbox Live store. It's still up on Steam right now, to my knowledge, but it was gone from both of those online marketplaces. And I was planning to make a video about how, hey, this game's about dying in really funny, accidental, but tragic ways. And the game itself was removed from the store in a not at all funny and very intentional, but still tragic way. And it was like, you know, there's some meaningful contrast there, some artful stuff to talk about. But then, like, shortly after I recorded this footage, I got the news that the PlayStation 3 store, the whole thing, was going down, and you wouldn't be able to purchase any games on the PlayStation 3 store anymore. And like, wow. Man, the window of opportunity to make my original video idea was kinda irrelevant. I noticed God Mode was gone from the PlayStation 3 store like a week before the PlayStation 3 store shut down. And God Mode was the least of worries where that was concerned, because at least you could still get God Mode on Steam. There were a lot of games that were going down with the PlayStation 3 store that you couldn't get anywhere else, like Okaboo, or Deadblock, or Page Chronica, or Super Rub-a-Dub. And I managed to save most of those through the generosity of my brother. I managed to get Deadblock. We both got that. We both got Okaboo. We both got Page Chronica. Super Rub-a-Dub, unfortunately, fell to the ether, and I will never experience it, no matter how awesome its music is. It is now lost to me. And caring about art, and the preservation of art, is fucking exhausting. It really is, because regardless of how much I want to personally experience all of the video game art, which is a lot, there's very few games I don't want to experience. It's also the case that, like, even if I don't, other people should still have the option to experience that art, regardless of whether I personally have access. And caring about games that are being killed is just emotionally exhausting. It's just such a tiresome thing, such a barbaric and nonsense thing to kill art, to just remove it from the world and make it inaccessible by any legal and most illegal means, after you feel like you're no longer making money off of it. Personally, if I had my way, you just wouldn't be allowed to remove your art after you release it, no matter what form it takes. And that might be a very controversial opinion to take, but I'm so tired of this. I'm so tired of it. After you release your art, it's not just yours anymore. It belongs to everyone. It doesn't matter who has the legal rights. That's why I don't delete videos on this channel anymore that have any sort of creative anything to them, including videos like this one, or some terrible ones that I don't like very much anymore. They're still up on the channel, because I think removing art is wrong. But realistically, there's no way to enforce something like that, unfortunately. And there's like no realistic way to stop people from removing games that they think no longer make adequate money either. You can't like argue from a standpoint of compassion or preservation with giant companies like that. And even smaller companies or people or studios sometimes just don't want to put in the effort to preserve their games when they don't want them up anymore, or they don't even see their games as art. And like maybe no one cares. Maybe no one cares, but you or me or a couple of other people, and they don't want to bother. But I feel like they should have to bother. I feel like that's the responsibility you have when you bring art into the world. But enough about that. It's time to talk about God mode a bit. If you've seen the RIPD video game, you'll notice that the shooting, the sprinting animations, and the general gameplay are very similar. There are even challenges, if you want to call them that occasionally appear, but they're much less like challenges in this one. They're more like blessings, some of which help, and some of which hurt, and some of which do both. In the RIPD video game, the challenges would be something like, stand in this area and defend it for a certain period of time, or kill this many dudes in this amount of time. But in this game, the blessings that appear are more like, well, now you get more attack during this, or the enemies will behave this way, or this time the enemies get goofy hats. So even though there's sort of an arcadey challenge-focused progression to events from wave to wave, it's very different. In no way is this the same game as RIPD, even though it controls similar and the shooting is similar. There are distinct enemy types, like these guys that are shooting green homing skulls that we can blast out of the air. The way that challenges work, I think they're called trials in this one, even though they're more like blessings, is different from RIPD. The level design is vastly different. Like in RIPD, the video game, all of the levels except for the final one aren't really straightforward video game levels. You kind of wander around a big map and fight in arena-focused battles. And while there are arena-focused battles here, it's more like one massive conflict, then you move to the new part of the level where there's another massive conflict. There's a much more natural sense of progression to this one than there is in RIPD. We're progressively moving further and further down the level, completing unique challenges along the way, as opposed to just shooting a bunch of dudes until the boss appears. And I think that makes the game completely different. The structure of the game is changed. What you do in the game as far as shooting dudes has not, but there are enough differences that I don't think this could even remotely be called the same game anymore. And the only reason I bring this up is because very frequently I see this game compared to RIPD or RIPD compared to this game as though they're identical, and that kind of stuff really bothers me. There are differences here. Even if the only difference in the actual gameplay was the levels, that would still be big enough of a difference, I think. But with a different story and different enemy types and more thoughtful enemy placement, I just think it's really not fair to say they're the same. And there's a lot of times I see people comparing games in that way, a way that seems inherently dishonest. Like, maybe to those people, maybe I'm not being fair, maybe to those people, it really is the same game. But it's just not. I think there's more than enough to differentiate them. I feel like my position is more supported by reality. I'm sorry, I swear I do try really hard not to sound egotistical, but it still happens. It's a problem. I wake up recently almost every day of my life thinking about whether today will finally be a day where me caring so much about video games will not cause me to have to think about the philosophy of art preservation and a lot of other heavy stuff for hours at a time, but it keeps happening. And in a way, I really can't help it without changing a core piece of who I am. I love video games. I love art. I basically live to analyze art. Speaking of that, let's analyze some art. Why do you think they call these little blessings tests of faith? They're not really tests of faith, are they? These blessings that appear? They just give you buffs or give the enemies buffs or give you both buffs or do something weird. But it's never explicitly a test or something hard. The stuff that happens in RAPD is definitely more of a test than the stuff that happens here. And why is it called a test of faith? I know that we're dead and this is the underworld, so there's some religious stuff happening. But what about this is faith-based? This seems entirely skill-based to me. Like, it's completely in our hands. There is no faith required. Unless he means the faith required to believe that, like, bullets are going to come out of my gun when I press the trigger. And there are some third-person shooters where that faith has been tested, but this is not one of them. That faith is not being tested in God mode. Never have I pulled the trigger and bullets have not come out. Bullets always come out and always hit where I shoot. This is the final area of this level, by the way, and I actually find it quite easier than all of the previous areas, even though it's meant to be the big finale to the level. And I'm not quite sure why, but I mean, all you have to do is strafe left and right up here at the top. And everything else pretty much takes care of itself as long as you're a good shot. There's so many health pickups lying around and so many ammo pickups lying around. You know, as much as I like God mode, and I'm enjoying talking about God mode, still fucking sad thinking about all the games that went down with the PlayStation Store, rendered unplayable for future generations. Listen, the video is called Even Gods Aren't Immortal, so let's not pretend that I didn't make this video to talk about weird shit like this. And I really don't want to call the video early just because I'm sad thinking about all the video games that are gone now, and about how hard video game preservation is, and how, like, you don't even want to think about the number of phone games that die. Oh god, I'm so tired. It would be super nice to be able to just play games at my own fucking pace. Because really, in spite of how it may seem, I'm just trying to have a good time. I just really like talking about video games and experiencing new art and thinking about new art. It's a blast. I love it. Well, I suppose I should mention before the video's over, even though I endeavored to complete this video without dying, because I wanted to do that, I like challenging myself. This game does run on a lives system, and I think you have 3 lives before you actually lose a level. So even though I played really good, you don't have to. That's not a mandatory, alright, look, I'm tired, emotionally, but I still like God mode. And, the video's about over. Hope you had a good time watching.
Test of faith.